So this is funny, right? Because I've interviewed hundreds of people over the years, and I like to cut through the facade, because at the end of the day, in our roles, it's very much a case of how do you operate under pressure. I think the challenge as black people we have is in business, there's not enough of us to sell to, if that makes sense, at the senior levels, in the spaces that I'm selling in.
Be bad if I didn't, isn't it?
Yeah.
Be very bad.
You're not like getting the same shut as the door.
No, not yet. Not yet. I don't know if you can record the door. That's what I'm saying. How you doing, Eddie? You right? Yes. Oh, we're coming inside? No, bro. Do you mind if we record, if that's all right?
Not the inside,
not the inside. Hello everyone, welcome back to Built with Lessons. My name is Jason. A lot of people focus on a success story. A lot of people focus on the final product, but here we focus on the failures. We focus on what didn't work for them, because people sharing their stories can help you prevent you from failing. Today I'm joined here with Eddie. Eddie, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm all good.
All good. So Eddie, do you mind giving a little introduction about yourself and how you started your journey to where you are today?
How do I describe myself? I'm a sales leader. I work for a technology firm, a software company, global software company, and I run the European sales team. That's my professional life. Outside of a profession, which I've been involved in tech for now 30 years, I have passions, right? And my passion is the creatives, the arts, photography specifically, to which my two young boys have taken up the mantle in terms of the creative side and expression, which I love. So I live through them in a way. But that's me, is essentially. What more do you need to know?
No, that's it. That's perfect,
Yeah.
man. That's perfect. Obviously, I know you very well.
Yeah.
Just to give a little audience a bit of a
Yeah.
introduction to yourself. Eddie, I'm going to jump straight into it. Was success always the goal, or did the path evolve over time?
Okay. So I think when you think about success, it's important to understand what it actually means to that individual. To me, this is success, right?
Yeah.
We've woken up, I've got my family around me, I have health, and I have the ability to communicate, my thoughts, my dreams, aspirations, and take part in this. And that's a measure of success. I have nothing more, nothing less. It's the moment. This is successful currently.
No, that's a great answer. So I don't know if you're too familiar with my channel. We mainly focus on the failures, like I previously spoken about. I believe it's important for the younger generation to learn from people like yourself that are successful, what didn't work for them, so they can learn from those mistakes. The next question I have for you is, what was your biggest failure personally and professionally?
I think I think the word failure is as if it's over and done. And so let's change the narrative and look at challenges, right? And my biggest challenge in a professional sense, and that continues to exist, is being in the minority, right? Being one of very few in leadership capacity in the tech space globally, right? And that's always been a challenge, and let's not try and sugarcoat it. That exists in today's society. We talk about diversity and inclusion, but it is what it is, and it's always a challenge which I kind of like embrace. And from a professional standpoint, I think that's one. From a personal perspective, it's the challenge of the unknown, right? And if I think about as a black man in society, it's one where I think there's always the fear of the future, the ability to sustain, the ability to continually earn, to look after your family, look after yourself. There's pressures, society pressures, to remain consistent in whatever field that you're in. and to operate at the highest level, right? And I think personally that, you know, being a leader of my household, I've got my family to support. That's always a challenge, right? And to bring out the best in my kids, that's my challenge.
Okay. So going on to my next question, you spoke about being a minority. You spoke about the challenges personally. What advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know today on those challenges?
I think my younger self would have been unapologetic if I was to turn back the clock. I think I had in the past a fear of, if you want to use that term, failure, right? A fear of not delivering or living up to other people's expectations, right? So if I was to look back at my younger self, I would have been authentically ruthless in all manners, right? Whether it be professionally or personally, with my time, my efforts, and my passions. You know, I would have executed a lot quicker. I would have failed faster as well. I would have taken more risks when I was younger. As I've got older, I've taken more risks because you can, right? And you become a bit fearless because of the things that you've seen and experiences that you've been in. So I feel my younger self would have been a lot more courageous.
I think a lot of young people especially, are scared to take those risks, are scared to fail. Because knowing from my experience, I was scared to fail. It's easy to say you're going to do something and don't do it, because once you do it, there is a chance of failing. Where it's easy to say in your head, I can do this. I can easily do that. Like for example, this channel, it's easy for me to say I could do a channel, I can get 1 million views, but then it's starting. That's what's difficult for me.
I think today's society, a lot of our failures are put online, if you want to call it failures, right? And that could be good and bad, right? In my day, I'm talking 30, 35 years ago when I was a teenager or whatever, you fail in secret, and there's no one to also talk to, right? You have a lot more, should I say, I won't call it mentors, but you have a lot more exposure to what people are getting up to in today's society, what people are doing. So therefore, there's a lot more learning to take third hand as opposed to experiencing it yourself, and also recognition of the fact that not everyone's in the same boat invariably, right? Depending on the field that you're in. So that provides you some solace at points when you're not sure if you're on the right path or not. So I feel that, in your space and your age, if you want to call it failure or disappointments, are a lot more visible because you have the social media aspect. If you're a sportsman and you used to trip over the first hurdle in 100, it goes viral or whatever. If you make a mistake in terms of a presentation or whatever, and it's been recorded, and depending on what happens there, it could go viral, good or bad. So there's things that I think adds to the pressure on our backs to always, in some ways, be perfect, which isn't always the goal, right?
There's a lot of pressure, especially on people my age. There's a lot of pressure to fail, to take the risks, because, like I said, everyone focuses on the success story. Everyone focuses on the final product. This channel's not about that. We focus on what did and went well for them. Eddie, all I can speak from is my experience, because I can't speak from someone else's. One of the things that I struggled with is delayed results. I always wanted it now. I didn't really focus on, okay, take your time, this will come, it will eventually come. You're building up. The small rewards, I always focused on the big rewards. What advice would you give to someone like myself, 20, just starting out? Because I'm not the finished product. I'm just starting. I'm not even in the middle yet. What advice would you give to me and someone else that's watching about those delayed small little rewards?
I think for me, it's enjoying the process, right? We are in an instant world.
Yeah.
We are in a world where you can obtain information instantly. Everything's speeded up. We're running at 100 miles an hour, right? Advent of technology, ChatGPT, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever. the ability to get now, if you look at even Amazon and stuff, is here and now, and it's speeding up. We need to slow ourselves down. I can only talk from experience, right? But enjoying that process of learning is essential, because it is about the process. There's never an end goal. What is the end goal, right? Whether you're looking to have your first job, get your first house, your wife, your children, everything is ever changing and nothing is constant. So the ability to, I hate to say it, but live in the moment, right? And learn, constantly learn from your goals that are ever changing. Nothing remains the same, right? The way I am today at 50 varies very much to how I was at 45, 40, 30s. When I was, 18, 19 years old, I had different goals and they're ever changing. So if that changes and the world is ever changing, why should you be instantaneous around your demands, for now? You miss out the in-betweens. And there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of, how can I explain it? There's something to be said about all the learnings, the minutiae of life. And that's my 2 pence. I think, you go to the gym, it's not instant. You're not going to go to do one session and build up your muscles, right? It's going to take years. If you're that person, if you're an athlete, anyone who's training to be something, it takes years and years of graft. So why should you expect instant success, right?
We previously spoke about yourself as younger, but could you go into a bit more detail? What was you like when you was my age, 20?
I was,
25.
So I studied microbiology at university, right?
Wow. Okay.
Very different to what I am now.
Yeah.
So I fell into sales. I decided to take a route whereby, it wasn't a manager or someone else to dictate my earnings. Sales is a sports game. It's a target-driven kind of environment, highly pressurized, and I wanted that fast money, if that made sense, right? But it came with consequences. Some good. There's always upsides, otherwise I wouldn't still be in it. But there is a consequence in that your brain starts to be wired to monthly achievements, quarterly achievements. You have no patience, effectively. Everything's about closing and moving on to the next goal. And that can be a good thing because it keeps you kind of motivated, but at the same time you can lose sense of your soul, especially working in the city. I worked in the city for 20 odd years, and it's lot of fun, a lot of drinking, a lot of socializing, your clients, etc. You're going out a lot. The office culture was always fun, but there's huge pressure that comes with what we do, and there's a consequence to that pressure. My younger self was lacking creativity, right? I was just focused about the career, the job, the targets, and progression in whatever role I was at. And my current self is very different. I don't have this. I have a drive, and I'm very. I have certain standards, but at the same time, I have an expression of self. I like comedy. I like my memes. I like photography, and I like socializing.
For the viewers at home, Eddie's helped me a lot on my journey from when I started. I was very much struggling with what you said with pressure. The pressure was getting to me. It was very new. I came straight from a football college into a working office environment. Not only that, I had my own challenges. I was very comfortable with my current environment. To going into a high level pressured environment where results have to be there monthly. Not only that, you have to behave a certain way, and you was helping me deal with that. What would you say helped you cope with your pressure?
I think it was a point in life where you accept that you are enough, and I became quite spiritual.
Okay.
After going backwards and forwards to Ghana, but certain situations came about whilst in Ghana where you recognize where you're coming from, and you recognize your power, and you recognize your weaknesses. And I think being comfortable with that kind of alleviates pressure. I was always pressured to try, when I was at points in my younger self, impress my dad, right? To show him that he didn't know what I was doing. He thought I was an accountant, right, at one point. And trying to explain to my dad that I was, in tech, in sales, etc. All right, fair enough. He marked my success based on, you bought a house, you invest in, these are the things that as an African man, that was his love language effectively. But I felt that, and it's sad to say, when my dad passed, just over 4 years ago, a lot of pressure came off my head. A lot of pressure to prove and recognize that I am I have my dad's DNA. I'm always going to be good. And my dad was always good. So my kids are going to be good. There's a lineage there. And, call it corny or not, but that's internalized or enabled me to be comfortable with myself in whatever capacity, whether it's in a professional sense or personal, because life isn't just about your job. It's about, there's a huge element with family that you're needing to address and go through.
This may be a bit of a personal question, but obviously you're speaking about the pressures with your dad.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that to now apply with your kids?
I now understand.
Okay.
I now understand. My dad grew up in a time, came to this country in '66, suffered incredible racism, right? At work and coming home stressed out. And then I'm one of 3 brothers, right? We were troublesome when we were young, and used to shout, and you used to think, oh, dad was just moany, just aggressive, and what's wrong with him? But the mood swings that he went through at home, I now understand, because he's holding it all up. He's effectively an immigrant. Brought up in a council flat in Colindale, and dad bought his first house with my mum. The pressures of that, earning very little but hustling it through.
Yes.
And going to work and facing extreme racism.
Yeah.
And I remember some of the stuff that he was coming home and telling us. I used to laugh, thinking it was funny. But then you recognise that this is the environment that that had to kind of get through. And I understand now. So I have a great appreciation for what he did as the head of the family. The things that he tried backwards and forwards. He was a very charismatic, salesy kind of individual, studied pharmacology and doing business in Ghana. And he's left us with a legacy and a foundation for us to build on. And now I understand. So the things I'm doing now, my kids don't understand necessarily, but they will do in years to come. And that's the key.
I know that quote. That's what my parents say to me all the time. You won't understand now, but it will be a time when you do understand.
There's a huge amount of pressure. And, if I think about my younger self, some of the things that my mum used to say to me, I wanted the fast cars and certain things when I was young.
Yeah.
And she always used to say, look, those things don't look good when you haven't got a home to go to, right? And you're coming back to your mum and dad's house.
Yeah.
So, I drove my mum's Golf GL, right? Not even a GTI, for a number of years, pulling upside at clubs, trying to chat up girls. It just wasn't happening, right? And that's life.
Yeah.
And now on reflection, I'm glad I made the sacrifices I did at that time and focused on certain goals, which was to, build up my own capital, build up property, investments, and it's continuing, right? So that's what I'm trying to instill into my kids.
Do you think there's a difference between stress and pressure? And if so, what would you define each?
Stress, in my mind, is always been something where you're doing things you don't want to do. That's stressful.
Okay.
Pressure is, something we apply to ourselves to get a particular outcome, because we want it. So it's pressure, right? Stress is something when I'm stressed, I'm doing something I just don't want to do. Either it's time, work, or an occasion is stressful, or doing a speech, stressful, because you don't really want to do it. Pressure, if you want to do something, you push yourself to do it and you apply that pressure. And sometimes you get external pressures as well, which is always healthy.
Yeah. Shifting the conversation a little bit, as you know, you've helped me a lot. When you are mentoring someone, or you have someone that come in for an interview, they may be young, they may be middle-aged. What are some of the features that you look for that I'll give this person my time of day?
So this is funny, right? Because I've interviewed hundreds of people over the years, and I like to cut through the facade. Yeah, because at the end of the day, in our roles, it's very much a case of how do you operate under pressure? Because you're undoubtedly going to start the job behind the curve. So how do you operate under pressure? And I look for authenticity as well, because I think our client base, and we sell to big financial institutions, insurance, any highly regulated industries is the space that our business operates in. The clients have seen it all. They've seen the finesse. They're coming into an engagement with our organisation, highly informed about the product. They've done their research. So the person fronting the sale has to be different from the competition. And those differentiators are either this, your colour, what comes out your mouth, how you listen, and how you essentially, how can I say it, adapt to the obstacles that invariably customers or prospects put in front of you. Being real with it, because the book, you can study methodology, or you can live it every day. And those lived experiences, and hence why we always recruit people that have experience and talent over years, are essential to the role. And I look for people that have actually come from adversity, not from their place of living, but in professional sense, came out of a hole and succeeded, because I want that to be repeated in our place. So I'll tell you what, there's one question that you put in that, you asked me what was one of my biggest failures when I was in my career, right? And I would say the answer to that, the answer to that, it's quite emotional actually, but it was not putting the family first.
Okay.
Right? This was in 1999, and I was working an opportunity which was quite sizable for a firm that no longer exists. And it was a decision that I made to stay in the country rather than go on holiday to Ghana with my mum and my brothers. And that decision ultimately cost me the ability to see my granddad on my mum's side for the very first time. I always have regrets for that, because he later passed, and my brothers experienced, seeing, hearing, getting stories from my granddad, and that's something I'll always live with, right? I would never ever do that again. Put business ahead of family, So I think that's a massive failing on my behalf, that you can't turn back the clock and get again.
I recently, going a bit off script here, is I went to a funeral not too long ago. It was my partner's aunt. I didn't really know the person, but the funeral she had, it taught me a lot. It taught me, it's more about, you can have the cars, you can have the money, you can have all of that, but at the end of the day, what's the real success is the people that are there and the stories that they tell you. Like this woman adopted over 100 foster kids. And they were all there. They were all there talking about their memories, and I was like, wow, this is what true success is. What's really valuable.
And it's all based on there's another question that you had for me, which was, what do I want to be remembered by? Right. And it's not for a title.
No.
It's not to be the best, which I'm not, photographer or whatever it may be. I would just want to be remembered for the feeling that you leave people with. You can't, there's no amount of cash, asset or whatever. Those things come and go. Money comes, it goes. An asset, a house, you live in it, you move on or whatever. But a feeling, an emotion, whether it be in a professional sense or personal with your friends, your circle, your family, that's invaluable, and that's all I live for, to be honest.
The memories you're not going to get back.
Yeah, you won't get
That's
that.
what keeps it.
One of my for if I look at people who have passed, it's never been anything tangible in terms of materialistic. It's experiences and a emotion that they've left, and that's what you miss. So that's what in terms of a legacy, that's what I'd want to leave behind.
Speaking about what people buy from who they like, one of the main things I preach about is being your authentic self, because you can sell them a front, but that will later on reveal itself.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to younger people about being authentic self? Because they may think, no one's going to like me like this, no one's going to like that. You obviously had to learn as you go through the failures.
I think the challenge as black people we have is in business, there's not enough of us to sell to, if that makes sense, at the senior levels, in the spaces that I'm selling into. So when it comes to authenticity, it's few and far between we're able to just be true to our absolute self, right? Because I think people buy from people that they find relatable. So you have to find that common ground pretty quickly. Coming from where we come from, right? But at the same time, that's why there's an onus on us to just keep, whether it be mentoring or bringing people through in business, adding to the pot, where we start to become decision makers and influencers in the business world, so that the network becomes that much more powerful. Otherwise we remain stagnant. So I think, one thing that I've found more often than not is that, there's some elements of yourself that you would need to just double down on. Eye contact, communication skills, how you engage with people, networking. It's a bravery. It's all of that. It's a front, right? And then there's elements where you might need to, especially as we are living in England, tailor and adapt to, right? Based on your audience, and everything's about your audience. And from a sales perspective, you could be selling to mechanics, you could be selling to finances, you can be selling to whoever they may be. It's adaptability to that particular type of audience and persona, which only you and that customer or prospect can define at that moment in time, because things change.
To end things off, for the audience that are watching, this is mainly for the younger generation. But not only that, it could be for someone that's feeling a bit lost. They may be middle-aged, they may be in the working class, that's feel a bit lost in life and feel stuck and don't know where to go, start off again. What challenge would you give to them to think about?
I think, asking what challenge for them to think about is to overcome the fear of asking for help.
Okay.
Right, because sometimes the ability to ask for help is dictated by pride. And have no pride in that. I think there is so many resources, so many people in our space. It's growing, that you can tap into for advice. Find yourself a mentor, find someone you can confide in, lean on, and never stop asking. At my age, I've got mentors. I'm always asking the question. There's always imperfections that I try and improve on or, erase. And I think, that's one thing. The younger generation sometimes feel a way to kind of ask an elder or a peer for help, which I think is crucial in today's day and age.
Eddie, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me.
Good to speak to you.
Thank you.